Schaff Randolph went to prison in 2008. He says his crime was less of a misstep and more the result of a bad environment.
After completing the service, there wasn't no real jobs for the trade that I took. So I went back to what I knew.
What he knew, growing up in North Philadelphia's Logan section, was that he could make good money selling drugs. After spending 4 years in the United States Navy as an electrician who serviced fighter jets, Randolph says he had no luck finding civilian jobs in that field.
Coming out to society, there's no jobs for that. You can go to an airport, but when you go to an airport and tell them I used to be an aviation electrician made on the United States aircraft carrier, they look at you and say, well, how much experience you got? I can tell them 4 years I did it, but they want certifications for that. You don't get no type of certification.
While the armed forces do market military experience as a stepping stone to a career, for the kind of work Randolph did, you need over 1,000 hours of additional training to work in the private sector. Like Randolph, veteran Bill Cobb hoped more doors would open for him after he served in the military.
I had no intentions of ever joining the military, but as I felt my options for doing something to escape the inevitable outcomes that most people in my neighborhood are forced to deal with, I enlisted in the Air Force.
At 20, while working part-time and taking classes at LaSalle University, he joined the Air Force Reserves. A few months later, his unit was called up to serve in Germany.
It was the most serious job that I ever had. It was the most structured job that I ever had. It was an opportunity to make more money than I ever had.
Cobb wanted to be a nurse and so worked as a medical specialist at a MASH unit, unloading hundreds of patients from C-130 airplanes carrying wounded from Iraqi battlefields. He was quickly promoted to the head of a small team.
It felt really good to be a leader, and I took it seriously. I made sure that I did a good job whenever I was asked to do a job. And if it was leading people, I always had questions about how to be a better leader.
That flush of responsibility and leadership ended when his unit deactivated. He went back to school and his part-time jobs, including one as a delivery man.
I remember the first day back at UPS. So I come back and there's like a, acknowledgement, cool, like, man, what was it like? Thanks for what you guys did. And I got an award.
Then it was back to business. While he was serving, some of his coworkers had put in enough time to earn full-time union jobs. But for Cobb, the clock had stopped running while he was gone.
Dude, I went away for war, and I didn't volunteer to do this. I was called and I had to go. Like, that's not fair. I want a promotion. I want to be where my friends are. I put my time in.
Cobb, who had been homeless for part of his childhood, was also trying to take care of his mother, an alcoholic, with his part-time earnings. Hoping to make a quick windfall, he agreed to be the driver for a local drug dealer who was planning to kidnap a rival's girlfriend. And he got caught. He says his friends, both in and outside of the armed services, were shocked.
What the hell happened? What did you do? How are you here? And just, realizing how incredibly stupid and it was just a horrible series of decisions.
Both Cobb and Randolph were convicted of felonies they committed after serving in the armed forces. Both also say they could have done a better job taking advantage of military benefits from service, like money to pay for school. Randolph says he joined the Navy because he knew college would not be a good fit. After serving, he resented that his experience fixing A-6 jets wasn't recognized outside the military.
I'm bitter because I thought that when I came home from the service, I really thought that the doors was going to be open. Oh, you're a vet. We're going to help you.
He was released from prison this April and is taking job training classes at Veterans Multi-Services Center in Philadelphia, a nonprofit that helps veterans of all stripes reintegrate into society.
All right. Okay, so we're going to do this lab, and first part of this lab, we're going to edit the business information.
After this computer skills class, he plans on getting a commercial driver's license to start his own trucking company, an idea he got while still in prison.
As I was in the prisons, I did learn little trades. Like Florida taught me how to start a trucking company. When I was in West Virginia, they had a leather shop.
He says he wants to start a business so he can hire other people who had trouble finding work, like he did.
It's kind of strange to say, but I think prison life got me more ready for society than the service.
After getting laid off 12 times when employers found out he'd done time, Cobb became a professional advocate for ex-offenders. Researchers and public officials invite him to give his opinion on policy questions like the usefulness of criminal background checks.
Devil's advocate. The other side will say it protects victims.
Well, who is the other side? Who's driving the conversation on behalf of the victims on the other
Legislators,
side?
state legislators, who will not want to do
And
this.
who's driving it through legislators? It's people who profit monetarily from conducting criminal background checks.
Well, that's certainly
They want to
part
make
of
sure
it.
that criminal background checks are always being done. The more profitable they
Right.
are.
I had never thought about them as a major lobbying group, but I wonder.
Oh,
if they
that's
actually
interesting.
do.
Yeah, it
That's
is
an
interesting.
It
No.
is a growth industry. That's interesting.
Yeah,
it's huge.
they're driving
It's huge.
these conversations.
Cobb and Randolph both spent less than a decade behind bars and are now focused on the future. Meanwhile, Vietnam-era veteran Melvin Dill has made it his goal to help veterans currently in prison, some for life.
I believe 45 and 50 years for a crime, that's enough time. That's enough time. And I think treatment is much better than incarceration.
Dill received mental health treatment and a lenient sentence for a crime he committed after serving in the Marine Corps. He says he wants to make sure other veterans are afforded that same opportunity to mend and enjoy civilian life.
What I have here is a legislative act. It's going to introduce to the legislators why veterans need some type of parole, some type of pardon for their crimes, due to the fact that they did have military injuries that caused them to commit a criminal act.
California, Minnesota, Illinois, and New Hampshire already have similar laws, which also make sure war-related psychological injuries count in court. In addition to his lobbying work, Dill visits veterans in prison and helps them with benefits paperwork.
I have to get verification that he's a veteran. That's the first thing. So I'll go on my computer and I'll go into the VA administration website and we'll start processing a claim for him. A claim where he can get his benefits while he's still in prison. Because veterans can get up to 10% of the disability payments. Now, the other 90% can go to a dependent. He may have a child still out there.
He's connected around 200 veterans to services, mostly in Pennsylvania and New Jersey so far. He sees his role as being a face and voice for veterans who are invisible to the general public.
The reason why we help, because the veterans that we do help that are in prison never got an opportunity to share this story, the real story. Why are they locked up?
Bill Cobb says he also feels like his service is invisible, out of necessity.
I don't frequently identify as a veteran. And it's intentional in some cases because there's a negative stigma with certain industries like employment. Like, so I remember there was this thing where government jobs, you know, you get veterans preference points. But for the private sector, I don't want to hire a crazy vet.
Cobb and Schaff Randolph both say they're thankful for VA services now, but wish that their time in uniform stood for more in their neighborhoods and with employers after they served.